Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in and listening to another one of my videos. We are getting started um, with the Revolutionary War part of our unit. And the before we get up to the Revolutionary War, we have to look at all the events that caused the separation of the 13 colonies with Great Britain. So that's what this video is about. I do want to give you some information, though, about this. So if you are watching this on a Friday, um, that means you are not in school because you're remote. And one of the things I'm really going to work hard to do is when I have to go through a PowerPoint like this, I'm going to try to go through that information in back-to-back days, meaning I'm capping myself at a 15-minute max on this video. So whatever we get through in 15 minutes, we get through. And so, right, this is, again, it's Friday that you're watching this. So that means the Thursday, Friday kids that are in school are getting it from me in person. And then we're going to finish the PowerPoint on Monday. And so I really want to work hard on giving both of those cohorts a chance to hear me speak it and have that discussion in person. So just be aware of that moving forward. Now, obviously, if you're fully remote, you get a Screencastify video both days. So I just want to give you a little bit of heads up on that. So let's get started. And so we're going to talk about the French and Indian War that you can see lasted from 1754 to 1763. This was a war between the colonies of New France and the British colonies fought in North America. So if we take a look back on this map, you can see here the blue is the French colonies, and then right here is the 13 British colonies. And you can see sort of this disputed area. And so again, right, it's going to be the French colonies fighting the 13 British colonies. And then sort of there was this 2-year period, 1754 to 1756, where the colonies are kind of fighting amongst each other. And then the mother countries, Great Britain and France, officially declare war in 1756. In America and in American history, we refer to this war as the French and Indian War, like I said at the beginning of this video. And again, the fighting size, Britain and the 13 colonies versus France, their colonies, and the Algonquin Indian allies. However, this can be looked at differently when studying it in global history. Internationally, this is known as the 7 Years' War because, right, in American history, we're focusing on what's happening in North America. This does become a worldwide conflict where France and Britain are fighting all over the world. But so you, in any of our future reading and anything we do in the future on this, you might hear it referred to as the 7 Years' War. Know that you can say both. I'm going to be referring it to mostly as the French and Indian War, but if you see in a reading the 7 Years' War, they're talking about the same thing. So what happened? Let's talk, right? The first thing to understand is that there are some major differences between the French colonies and the British colonies. As you can see in New France, there's only about 75,000 people. What their economy is based on is fur trapping, catching animals and selling the fur to make clothing from that fur. So, sort of as the French colonists are in the wilderness and in the woods trapping these fur, a lot of French colonists married native women and adapted to the native culture. There was a true blend of French and Native American culture in these French colonies. And so when this war starts, the Native Americans join the French. They fight with the French in this war. Conversely, when you look at the 13 British colonies, look at that population. There's about 1.5 million British people in the 13 colonies. Again, mostly farmers, right? We talked yesterday about the economies of the 3 colonial groupings. So one of the things that happened is farmers want more and more land, right? The bigger the farm, the more money you can make. And so what happens is British colonists start moving westward, right? They start moving into what is the French colonies, and they're ignoring these land rights. There you see again, right? They're moving west. We do see the Iroquois help the British colonists, though. So, okay, right, knowing that, what causes this war? There's three causes that you're going to see on this slide. The first cause is that both Britain and France claimed the Ohio River Valley. So that is where now Ohio is in western Pennsylvania. The Britain says, "Yep, this is our British land." The French say, "No, it's ours." Right. So immediately there's a conflict. Right. Two empires in Europe claiming that part of North America as their own. Britain takes it a step further. They say, "Now we don't care what France says. This is our land," and they issue a land grant to the Ohio Company. And what that means is Britain gave all of this land in the Ohio River Valley to the Ohio Company, and the Ohio Company was tasked with dividing the land up, selling that land, and allowing British colonists to move there. So it's one thing to say this is ours. Now what Britain is doing is actually following through with it, claiming the land, dividing the land up, selling it, allowing British colonists to move in. France isn't going to like that, right? They still believe that's their land. So to sort of counteract to the Ohio Company, the French start building forts along the Appalachian Mountains to prevent and discourage British colonists from moving west, right? And so they put military forts all up and down sort of what they believe is their eastern border, uh, so that British colonists would see that and be like, oh, we don't want to mess with them. So these three bullets right here, 1, 2, 3, these are the three causes of the French and Indian War. We are going to hammer these points over the next week, right? You need to know these are the three causes of this war. So here we see this circle right here, this black circle is the Ohio River Valley. That is the disputed territory, right? And now we zoom in, we can kind of see it highlighted. And the British or the French start building these forts. And I think this next map shows you, right, sort of these stars are the forts that the French built, especially in this Ohio Valley, right down here. Uh, Again, to discourage the British from coming over here, saying, hey, we got forts. We're ready. We're ready for you. So what happens? This is one of my favorite names in history, Robert Dinwiddie, who was the governor of Virginia. Also, by the way, an investor in this Ohio company. So he uh, was making money off the sale of this land in the Ohio Valley, right? As a person who owned stock in this Ohio company. He sends this guy, some of you may have heard of him. His name is George Washington. Yep, the same George Washington that becomes our first president. He's 21-year-old at the time. He says, hey, George, go out there and just ask the French if they'll leave our land. Well, how do you think that went over, right? The French didn't, right? That would be like me coming to your house and saying, hey, do you guys mind leaving your house? This is ours, right? You're not going to do that. And the French didn't do that either. They said, listen, this is our land. We're not leaving. And if you don't leave, we're going to have issues. And so with the French refusing to leave, war was unavoidable. It really, that was the last straw, right? The British said, you're not leaving our land. The French said, you're not leaving our land. Well, okay, now we have to fight over it. Here is Robert Dinwiddie, and here is a young George Washington on the right. So the colonies have to prep for war now, right? One of the first things that they do is create what they call the Albany Plan. This is a plan authored and written by Ben Franklin. And he says, hey, how about we unite the colonial militias and governments? So each colony had its own militia, right? The colony of Virginia had its own little army. The colony of New York had its own little militia and army. And each colony had a governor and some leaders in their own congresses. And so Ben Franklin said, hey, we're stronger together. Why don't we all do this together, right? Now, but here's what you have to understand. People were worried about a loss of power. Different colonial leaders didn't want to lose their power that they thought they might if they joined. What Ben Franklin really wanted to do is create one colonial army. Say, hey, we've got to do this together. You can see the slogan, join or die, right? We've got to join together or we're going to get beat, right? We have to. Here's a definition for militia that you did on your vocab sheet Monday. So what happens here? Albany Plan was the first time that the colonies were going to try to unite, right? Meaning this is in as early as 1754, like, hey, let's do this together. What happens is not everyone buys in. There's not true buy-in. And so Virginia, the largest, the most populated colony of the 13, says, we'll handle this. George Washington is tasked with being the leader of this militia, and one of the first things he does is goes and attacks Fort Duquesne. This does not have a happy ending. George Washington and his men are just absolutely embarrassed and obliterated. Washington loses nearly every one of his men. He has an embarrassing defeat, and he very narrowly escapes death himself. And so what it is come to the realization quick that the colonies alone aren't going to be able to fight this war. And so that is when Britain gets involved. Britain decides, okay, we've got to send soldiers, we've got to send veteran military leaders to lead this fight, right? We now have to get involved because you colonies can't do it alone. So now our powerful empire is going to help you fight this war. The British Navy is the most powerful navy in the world at this point. They're going to blockade French ports. That means they're going to not allow any ships in and out of different French ports. So that's going to mean no supplies can get into France and its colonies, no military assistance, right? And then finally, Britain's going to form an alliance with what is now Germany, what was called Prussia back then. So I know I went fast through this, but I obviously wanted to get through a certain point. I hope you understand these videos are here for you, right? You can watch this as many times as you need to, or watch a specific part as many times as you need to. Obviously, you've connected to this through Google Classroom, and it'll stay there. This is going to be important information because on Monday we're going to talk about, okay, what was the outcome? How does the war end? And what happens because the war ends? So, after you listen to this, go back and listen to some of the parts you're confused about. And of course, as always, if you ever have any questions, please feel free to email me. And I'm available at 2:10 each day for my office hours via Zoom. So I'm always happy to re-explain, reteach, try to explain something to you in a different way. So that's what I got for you today. I hope you all have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you Monday.